My name is Jon Newhart, and I love food. I've spent over 25 years studying food and working as a professional chef. During that time, I've traveled across the country and around the world. One thing I've discovered is that a lot of my favorite food comes from right here, where I call home. Come with me now as I visit some of the farms and meet some of the people who help grow and produce this great food. We'll see why what they do is so special and unique. Then I'll take some of their fantastic products back to my kitchen and show you some recipes that you can make in your own home. I'm so excited to share with you what it is that makes me a Vermont foodie. Hello and welcome to Vermont Foodie. Today we are at Windfall Veggies and Beef here in Franklin, Vermont, and we are talking with Nancy Fisk, the owner, and we're going to find out a little bit about what they do here and just the great breadth of products that they offer. So hi Nancy, welcome to Vermont Foodie.
Hi John, thank you for coming up to the farm and your crew. It's wonderful to have you here.
Oh, it's really great to be here. I'm really happy to be here.
Good.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the history of Windfall Veggies and Beef?
Well, Windfall Veggies and Beef is a relatively new business. It was something that we started about a year and a half, not quite 2 years ago, as another means of income to help support the the small dairy farm operation that we have. And as it turned out, this spring, we have exited dairy on the heels of the pandemic, and now this is our main source of income, the beef and vegetables.
Wow, wow. The pandemic certainly caused a lot of change for a lot of people, huh?
Yeah, it sure has.
So, well, what kind of vegetables do you grow here?
Well, quite a variety. We have some root vegetables like carrots and beets, and then we have tomatoes, cucumbers, eggplant is new this year for us, and string beans, yellow and green, kale. So there's a variety. Onions,
Boy,
lots of onions.
that really is an amazing variety.
Yep.
Do you grow anything that's kind of unusual here?
Well, this year we are trying something different because my son-in-law Scott told me about this cucamelon, and I didn't know anything about it. It's actually a fruit, and so I planted some, and it seems to be quite a little item of conversation at the market, and it's people they buy it, they love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never heard of a cucamelon. Can you describe what it's like to me?
Sure. It's about the size of, it's a mini watermelon on the outside, and on the inside it looks like a cucumber, and it tastes like a cucumber with a little zing of lime citrus, and it packs quite a crunch when you bite into them.
Wow, that sounds
really good.
neat.
Yeah.
I can't wait to try one.
Yeah, they're really good.
Do you operate all year long, or are you just seasonal?
Well, the beef part is all year long, and the veggies, of course, seasonal with the greenhouse, and it's not heated, so we get started early, and it goes right through till mid to late fall.
Wow. Well, speaking of the beef, what kind of cows do you raise?
Well, we have it's a Holstein Angus mix right now, and we were using our Holstein dairy to get those calves, and now we are buying them from a neighbor farmer.
Fantastic.
So it's working out well.
That's great. What cuts of beef do you offer?
Well, we have tenderloins, very few of those, and ribeyes and T-bones and porterhouse. Those go quickly. And then sirloin, and those are all an inch thick, and people like that because it's a little more forgiving on the grill. Also chuck roast, 2 inches thick, and some stew meat, and lots of Hamburg. All the cuts of steak and roast are vacuum packed, and the Hamburg's in tube packaging. So
Nice. Do you ever do any custom orders?
Yeah, well, when people call for an order, they'll have a mix of different steaks and roasts, and it's whatever their preference is. But we don't Some people buy halves. We don't have too many of those right now because of the processing schedule, but and we want to keep our freezers full so when people do call for an order. But yeah, we give people what they want for the most part.
Nice. Now, if somebody's seeing this and they want to get a hold of some Windfall veggies or beef, where can they find you guys?
Well, right here at home, we pretty much sell from the house and have licenses to sell both from the meat anyways, from the market and from home. And at the market, it's Northwest Farmers Market in St. Albans every Saturday from 9 to 2 on Taylor Park. And that runs from mid-May to late October.
Fantastic.
And we sell right here from home. And I advertise Windfall Veggies and Beef on Facebook, so social media. And when I have something, I'll put it on there and people will share it, which is kind of nice. And I've actually boosted some ads and with some really good results.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, now the big question. What have you got in this beautiful basket for me to take back to my kitchen?
Well, a lot of color, John. Pretty much, the nice dark, the eggplant and the beets, carrots, peppers, yellow peppers, green peppers, some jalapenos. There is a buttercup squash in there, cucumbers, cucamelons, a summer squash, zucchini. So, and then there's a nice ribeye package as well.
Fantastic. Well, I can't wait to get this back to my kitchen and we'll see what we can come up with out of it.
Okay, great.
Well, what an amazing array of vegetables from Nancy Fisk's farm. And if you, of course, remember, she also sent me home with some delicious steaks as well. The array of vegetables and the breadth of variety is so outstanding there that as I was thinking about what to demonstrate for you, I realized that there wasn't any way possible that I could make something with everything she sent me without just having a giant mound of vegetables. But then I got to thinking, giant mound of vegetables. Yeah, I'm kind of into that if it's a giant mound of vegetables that's done well. So I'm going to do a giant mound of vegetables for you today. And what's a nice way to call a giant mound of vegetables? Well, I always liked Italian. It has kind of a romantic flair. So we're going to call our giant mound of vegetables Verdura Mista, which exactly means mixed vegetables in Italian. We're going to cut all our vegetables up and saute them together quickly, almost as if the same style as you would with an Asian stir fry. And we're going to serve all those with a crusted ribeye steak, right from one of the Fisk's own cattle. So we're going to start with the steak and making the crust for the steak. A crust is just that. It's going to be a mixture of salt, pepper, and seasonings that we will press into one side of the meat, and then we will sear the meat quickly on both sides. When you sear meat in a pan or roast it in an oven, it's very important that you allow the meat to rest. And resting is the technique that I'd like to share with you today. When you apply heat to a piece of meat, all the muscle fibers go like this. They get very tight together in response to that heat. When you allow the meat to rest after it comes away from the heat, whether it's out of the oven or out of the pan, it gives all those clenched up fibers a chance to slowly relax. And as they relax, they create little tiny spaces in between them. And in those little spaces, that's where your juiciness for your juicy steak comes from. If you slice into that meat while it's still clenched, that clenching meat is really going to wring itself out, and you're going to wind up with a dry steak. So it may seem like an incredibly long time while we prepare our Verdura Mista that this meat is just sitting on the side of the table resting. But it's important, and the reason is we're giving all those muscles time to relax again. But let's get right into our fennel crust. So Verdura Mista, Italian, language of love. One of the great flavors of Italian food for me is fennel. And when I say fennel, I mean fennel seed, not the bulb that you buy in the grocery store. Fennel seed, which is this right here, really is the seasoning that gives sweet Italian sausage its flavor. So if you aren't familiar with it just by name, think of what Italian sausage at the fair tastes like in the summertime. That's fennel. So we're going to start to make our crust by taking a little bit of fennel and crushing it. A cool way to do it is in a mortar and pestle. I'm a normal guy. I don't have a mortar and pestle floating around my house. But what I do have is a cutting board and a little pat. So what I'm going to do is take my fennel seeds and just spread it around on the board. Now I'm not trying to pulverize this into a fine powder. The other part of a crust that I really want to have in our finished steak is something crunchy to chew down on. So when you bite into the outside of that steak. So I'm just going to take my pan, and I'm kind of going in circular motion here. And some of them are getting crushed and some of them are not. And when I'm happy that I've got what I want crushed, I'm going to go right to the plate. So we're going to get right onto the plate with our whole and lightly crushed fennel seed. And the other aspect that I want to really bring home that big fennel flavor is fennel powder, which is nothing more than fennel seeds that have been ground in a spice grinder. You can use a spice grinder of your own. You could buy a coffee grinder for this, or you could buy this pre-prepared, which is what I've done today. Also in our crust, we want to have our seasoning. Coarse ground black pepper is always my favorite. Once again, just like the fennel seeds, I like to crunch down on it. And a little bit of coarse sea salt. So I'm just going to use my fingers, mix everything together, and get it spread evenly. Now fennel is a fairly strong flavor, so I'm only going to crust one side of this ribeye. You could choose to do both sides if you want. You will have more of a fennel flavor when you're done. The decision is up to you and your own personal taste. So we've got these great ribeyes. And I'm just going to get one out for right now. Look at that beautiful steak. Gorgeous. And I'm going to crust this side. So while we were talking, I've been warming my pan. You want to have a hot pan to start. You can see my oil is smoking. That means it is definitely hot. So what we're looking to do is cook the outside fairly quickly and leave the inside fairly warm at best. We don't want to have a well-done steak, especially with a nice cut like a ribeye. We're going to shoot for medium or medium rare. If you like a steak well done, simply leave it in the pan longer than I'm going to right now, and you'll get what you like. And make sure that you cook it the way you want it done. So we're going to start with our fennel crusted side first. So you hear a nice little sizzle as our steak is starting to sear. I am going to add some more salt and pepper. Now, another important aspect of searing is don't do this with your pan. What's happening as the meat sears is the naturally occurring sugars in that meat, but yes, even meat has naturally occurring sugars, are going to start to melt and turn brown. And what happens when those sugars melt is they turn into caramel, which is melted sugar, of course. Caramel is delicious, and we certainly love to have that in our crispy crust on top of our steak. So we're just going to make sure to let this relax. We're going to let it sit still on the pan so the sugars have time to melt and become caramel. And we're not going to mess with it too much. Okay, I think we're about ready to flip our steak over. We'll see how our first side sear has come. Beautiful. So you can see you've got some brown there. I can smell that the fennel is toasting. I wish you could smell it too. It's fantastic. Now, when I flip this over to sear, I'm also going to turn 90 degrees. Why did I turn 90 degrees? Very simply, this portion of the pan where the steak was sitting for the first side is slightly cooler. I want a nice hot side for the steak to sear on. As a matter of fact, I'm even going to add a little bit more vegetable oil. Just to help even out that heat. Another thing that I'm doing to determine how cooked this piece of meat is, that I want to not be medium well, but I certainly want to be cooked enough to be palatable to my taste, is I'm watching the edge that hasn't come in contact with the hot metal of the pan. You can slowly see the gray growing in and the red shrinking as the meat gets cooked through. Okay, and I think that's great. So we're going to remove the meat to our cutting board and allow it to rest, as we discussed earlier. We're going to take the whole thing and set it to the side. So we're going to remove our pan to a safe place and switch to our flash frying Verdura Mista pan, aka non-stick skillet. And we'll start getting our vegetables ready. So we've got so much to choose from. We're going to take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and just make a big collection out of everything. So to start with, we've got these little tiny peppers. Not much needs to be done with them. I think all I'm going to do is quarter them and remove the seeds. And we've got these delightful baby carrots over here. They're absolutely cute. I don't think I want to do too much to them. I've peeled them ahead of time. I am going to remove the greens. And I think I'm going to cut these into what's known as an oblique shape, which means I'm holding the knife at an angle. One cut, quarter turn, one cut, quarter turn. One cut, quarter turn, one cut, quarter turn, one cut, quarter turn, one cut, quarter turn. Just like that. That is called oblique in fancy restaurants. And we've got some delicious kale, which looks great. To do the kale, I'm going to remove the stem. And just go into large chunks. Now, most of these vegetables we're going to cook all together, but I think I'm going to leave the kale till the very end and then mix it all in, just so that the leaves are just barely wilted, because I prefer my kale just barely cooked through. I don't want it to turn brown. We've also got this long orange chili, which is sort of a moderate spice level. So once again, I'm just going to take out the stem and the seeds. And then maybe I'll cut this at a fun angle. It's really whatever you want it to be. Once you get to the point where the stem and the seeds are gone, you could leave them whole if you like. Just throw them in the pan and go for it. We've got these pretty cool little beets. I think I'm going to use the stalks as well. And contrary to much beet life, I'm going to leave the skins right on. I am going to slice them rather thinly. They're very crisp. I can tell that they will take a little bit of heat to cook. I'm going to keep these soft as well. And I think that's the makings of a pretty good little vegetable saute. So let's commence. We've been letting our pan warm up the entire time. I'm going to add a little cooking oil. Now this is an instance where you would certainly want to start with cooking oil. We're going to finish with extra virgin olive oil at the end. Extra virgin olive oil is far less processed than cooking oil. And if you cook over high heat with extra virgin olive oil, you're going to compromise the extra virgin olive oil flavor that you spent the money to buy. So it's much better to stir fry, if you will, with a cooking oil that can stand up to a higher heat. So we'll start by adding our peppers and the tops of the beets. Carrots are in there as well. Part of the concept of stir fry is to keep stirring. That's why it's called that. It's not just a clever name. You want to keep everything moving in the pan. The idea is that the pan is so hot, if you don't, it will burn. And if you were in a very traditional setting with an actual Asian wok setup, that would really be the case. For our purposes, we're sauteing over very high heat. I can stop, talk to you for a minute, and I'm not going to burn everything. But we do want to keep stirring periodically as we go. We're going to let these go for just a few minutes until we see that the peppers are starting to wilt, possibly brown around the cut edges. Then we'll add our beets and commence with that. We'll add a little bit more oil, and we'll let the beets go for a while, and then we'll finish up by just wilting the kale, and we're going to finish everything off with a nice splash of this really nice balsamic vinegar. All right, we can see that we've got some brown starting to form on the edges of our vegetables here. That's caramelization, just like we talked about with the ribeye. That's the sugars in the vegetables starting to turn to caramel. It's going to add a really nice depth of flavor. And we're ready to add our beets. Now what I'm going for here is crisp, crunchy beets. I don't want soft beets like you would find out of a can. I want to let the person eating this know that these beets are fresh. They've been plucked from the earth just a little while ago. Our veggies are going and our beets are cooking nicely. I'm kind of feeling like I wish they would speed up a little bit, so I'm going to share with you another little trick. This is just ordinary tap water. I'm just going to add a little bit to the pan. So what I've just done is create a little bit of steam. The steam is going to speed up the cooking of the beets for us. They're still going to be crisp, but I want them fork tender, and I basically just done a tiny little secret to achieve that a little more quickly. You can also see that the beets are releasing their juice and everything's turning a bright pinkish color. Look at that. Okay, at last we're ready to add our kale. So I'm just going to pick the whole thing up and drop it right in on top. I'm also going to take this opportunity to add a couple cracks of pepper. And a nice pinch of salt. Now clearly if I were to try and toss this pan, we would have kale everywhere. So this is a point where I will resort to a spatula. As we go, the kale is slowly starting to wilt down. Once again, we don't want to have overcooked kale. All that green freshness is my favorite thing about kale. And to take away from that green freshness would be detrimental to the finished product. That being said, kale is very fibrous and tough. Has something of a bad reputation for that even. So this light cooking is going to help alleviate some of that toughness and fibrousness. And I'm making sure to keep it going with my spatula as the pieces wilt. I don't want one leaf of kale to be stuck on the bottom and turn brown or gray. while the others get done. Just a couple more drops of water for some added steam. Now we have a couple more steps to this Italian stir-fry Mista Verdura we're making. One is we're going to add some aged balsamic. This is an aged balsamic. It's a little bit more expensive than a regular balsamic at the store would be. But that aging process makes the vinegar get thicker and sweeter. And this is a finishing vinegar, quite muchly. You could certainly use it for other purposes, but it's not as acidic. So it's great to just put a dash in at the very end. For some sweetness, we'll mix that through. Gather our serving platter. And right at the very, very bitter end, we'll add our extra virgin olive oil. As I mentioned before, this is the olive oil that has the great flavor that we don't really want to apply a lot of heat to. So this can go right on the corner of our platter. Oh boy, it smells great already. And there we have Verdura Mista. So the whole time we were doing that, we've been allowing our steak to rest. We're looking for a nice medium rare, beautiful piece of meat like this. Even rare is great. But for my tastes, the last thing I want to do is cook it well. All the muscles have unclenched. We should see relatively little pooling of the juice as we carve it. We're going to carve our steak. Now with a ribeye, you'll have that eye of fat right in the middle that you can see, and that's okay. I will probably carve around that. We've got a nice rare steak. And really, all the juice has gone right back in there, right? So we'll pick her up, come to the plate. And you're ready to serve. So first, a little bit of our Italian stir-fry, mixed vegetables. Make sure I get one of these delicious beets. So fresh. Just a hint of sweetness from the balsamic. Lovely. And now I'm going to try some of this fennel crusted ribeye, which looks fantastic. The steak is tender, the fennel is crunchy, the seasoning is right on. Fantastic. Many thanks to Nancy Fisk and Windfall Beef and Veggies for allowing us to come and visit today. And many thanks for just the huge, impressive basket that she decided to send home with us, with such a wide array of her vegetables and her steak. Thank you for joining me on Vermont Foodie. I hope you'll come back again.